Hi, this is Ian Eagle from CBS Sports. Wex On, Wex Off starts right now with Jason Wexler.
Thank you to Ian Eagle of CBS Sports for that. Can't think of a better way to start off. This is Wex On, Wex Off. Jason Wexler, Tom Campbell here with you. Tom, we always talked about the fact that we were going to do a podcast. It took 2 years of working at the same job, and you know what? I'm finally happy that we were able to get something done 2 years after we originally set out to accomplish it.
Oh, yeah, me too. I'm glad that we're finally doing this. You know, it's been a while. We talked about it a lot, but now we're finally able to, get it going and have some fun with it, you know?
And you're actually not the first Oswego grad I'm doing radio or a podcast type thing with. Spent some time as you know, 101.3 ESPN in Burlington, where I worked with Brady Farkas and Arnie Spanier, as well as Rich Haskell. But listen, I'm excited to be doing a podcast with somebody that's not just straight from Ithaca. Hopefully we'll get some different perspectives. Tom, I know you're a big Jets fan. We'll get into that. And, I think we have to start where everybody's going to start, and pretending that we haven't been working from home for the last 2 weeks would just be ignoring the obvious. I think I'm on my third or fourth week working from home, and I like parts of it, but there's plenty I don't like.
Oh, I agree. I mean, this is about my third week now working from home, and I'll tell you one thing. I can't wait until all this is over with and we can go back to a normal life, because honestly, working from home is more tough than working like in the office or working at work. It's more difficult, and I'm just kind of over it already, to be honest.
And I was gonna say that too. You know, in my current new job, I work on the laptop, and we brought our laptops home, and we're able to work with that. But in the job that you and I work together, and the job that you're still currently at, when you're in the office, you have 2 or 3 screens, so it's got to be throwing off your productivity a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it kind of does a little bit. It's kind of weird, but at first it's a little bit weird, but now it's kind of like I'm over it. I'd rather just go in the office, but I understand that, everyone's in isolation because of this coronavirus, and it just sucks. This coronavirus has really, really messed up a lot of things for a lot of people, not just for sports, but life in general. But it's been the worst thing to happen ever in my lifetime, at least for right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only 24. You're, how old are you? 27, 28?
27, yeah.
27. Yeah, so I mean, neither one of us have seen anything like this in our lifetime, and the most important part is that people are trying to do the social distancing thing, and I know it sucks, not seeing your friends and not being able to really see anybody besides your family, who you're probably sick of because you're in the same house with. At least speaking for myself a little bit, it's good that I'm working during the day. My parents are working during the day as well, so we can kind of stay out of each other's way. There's good parts and bad parts to working from home. I like that, to be honest, I could wear sweatpants, which is nice, but I think I learn more, and I'm more focused in the office. There's no question about that.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely more focused in the office. I mean, because at home, it's difficult, right? Because you have the TV, you got your video games, you could be on your phone while you're working too, right? I mean, don't tell anybody, but I mean,
Yeah, listen. I've been on my phone once or twice during work. I've been there.
Right. Yeah. So it's difficult. There's a lot of distractions when you're working from home, especially with you have a lot of people in the house with you. If you live with a lot of people, because of this whole isolation and stay at home and all that. So it's more distractions at home than in the office, and you're more productive at the office. And I honestly can't wait till this goes back to normal, and I can actually go back out and work out at the office,
And one more point on that before we get to the actual point of this, because eventually we'll start talking about sports and how coronavirus affected the sports landscape as we know it. But having had the pleasure of having been to your house, Tom, I know that your dog must be driving you crazy.
Yeah, she always does. I mean, she's a good dog and all that, but she's actually been pretty good. At least during like the working hours, she's not barking. She's pretty quiet. But yeah, she's a dog. But not too bad, and kind of surprised.
I like your dog. Your dog makes me laugh. But it's good that she's not distracting you while you're working. You have a very important work to get done. And now the workers, to seamlessly segue as we do, the workers that we are so accustomed to watching night after night are these athletes, obviously. no sports in this country are going on. Italy, at least for me, was the first country where I kind of took notice of, okay, they're playing sports without fans. And I remember speaking to my dad about that a couple of weeks ago, and I said, wouldn't that be crazy if the United States did something like that? Because I can't even imagine that.
Right.
And then you had LeBron James coming out and saying, you wouldn't play in a empty arena. You thought the NBA was going that route, Tom, and then all of a sudden, the last NBA game to have been played was March 11th.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. I mean, I saw the news just like you did. It was crazy how you could go down that direction with no fans, and LeBron coming out saying he doesn't want to do that. And what are they going to do during this? Right? What if it hits here at home, just like it's spreading all around the globe? What are they going to do? And then, that one day, March 11th, was the last games, and you were surprised that the NBA got shut down. And then thereafter, all the professional sports leagues got shut down, which I have never seen this day in my lifetime. I know I'm 27, but I don't know if anybody's seen this in their lifetime where the NBA gets shut down. And then since then, it's like, it's been crazy. It's been crazy not to have any sports on TV or to watch or anything. It's been a time.
So that's my other question for you. Obviously, you'd be spending a majority of your time watching some type of sports. Around this time, we'd probably be watching March Madness. I know myself, I'd be watching plenty of March Madness. Instead of watching the Mets probably win their first game and, see how the rest of the season goes. But baseball, I think, Tom, will ultimately end up getting played. I don't see a scenario in which the NBA will start up again for this season. I don't see a version in which they can season, because I think by the time that the government deems it safe to have these large social gatherings again, we're at least June. And, if on June 1st the government decided that it's okay to start playing basketball again, Adam Silver decided it's okay to start playing basketball again, they're not just going to start playing June 2nd. These players would get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's a tough time, to be honest with you, the NBA is going to do. But, I mean, I do agree with you on that. I don't think the NBA is going to have a rest of the season. I don't know if we're going to have, I guess you could say, an official NBA champion this year. We're not going to have that because of this. And unfortunately, a lot of things were taken away, including sports, including possibly the NBA season, the NHL season. And, you got to think about all the logistics in place, too, of this. When they do come back, right, where are they going to be playing games? Are they going to be at, neutral sites? Are they going to be doing like a round-robin tournament? Those are just some things that they were speaking of doing to get the rest of the games in. But, I mean, you got to think about all of that, too. What arenas are going to be available and so on and so forth. And I'll be honest with you, I just don't see the NBA season coming back on anytime soon, to be honest with you.
And I think
I want to see baseball at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. And to say the same with hockey, obviously, because the timelines for those two are relatively the same.
Right.
And, like you said, speaking of logistics for the stadiums, like the Brooklyn Nets, for example, play at the Barclays Center, but the New York Liberty also play, I'm not sure if it's all their games at this point, but, at least some games at the Barclays Center. And then, by the way, if basketball came back, hockey would come back too. And you'd have all these teams, in the case of the Staples Center out in Los Angeles, you'd have the case of, if you're including the Sparks in that, you have 4 teams trying to use one arena and, how many games left and how would they continue. I know it's something that the NBA is continuing to monitor and continuing to try to figure out. Well, if the season started all of a sudden on June 1st, for example.
Back once they say, okay, we can come back and play, whether it's with fans or without fans. You just got to think about, what if some of these arenas are hosting concerts and things like that? The summer concerts. It's a lot to take in, and Adam Silver has a lot on his plate to think about, as well as the rest of the league. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. I just don't think we're going to see the rest of the NBA season, which honestly is going to suck, and it's going to be a little weird too, not to see it ending and to not really see an NBA finals, or the playoffs. And
you know me, I'm a huge LeBron guy, so I start to think about how specifically is that going to affect LeBron's legacy. Obviously trying to win more championships and catch Jordan, who was 6 for 6. LeBron will obviously never be that. But the number he's probably looking for at this point in his career is to try to win 6. And, he might have won it this year.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't think we're going to be able to find out.
And I agree. It just sucks that we can't see that to see if he could get that ring. And right now, I mean, when they ended or postponed the season back on March 11th, Jason, I mean, the LA Lakers were heating up. They were that team, at least in the Western Conference, that were going to be that team to represent the Western Conference in the NBA Finals. And I think we were going down a road where we were going to see epic NBA Finals between the Lakers and the Bucks, and that was something that I was really looking forward to seeing, to be quite honest with you.
I think we have the city right that lost team would have came out of the Western Conference.
Right.
I don't know if it necessarily would have been the Lakers. I was looking at it from a Laker-centric point of view because, as you know, for the last 2 years, I'm all of a sudden a huge Laker fan. 2003, I was a big Cleveland fan. 2010, I decided, what, Miami can't be so bad. Then I decided, Cleveland's really not that bad. You can see where I'm going with this. I'm a Net fan besides that, but I follow LeBron wherever he goes. So I was thinking about that in terms of his legacy. But what about a guy like Kawhi Leonard? What if he was able to win a championship with a third team?
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't think about that, but you're absolutely right about that. I mean, wherever he goes, and I said this before, wherever Leonard goes, he seems to win it. He seems to win that ship, to win that ring, San Antonio, Toronto, and now with the LA Clippers, I mean, that would be interesting to see, too, because eventually I thought at least the Western Conference Finals would have been between the Clippers and Lakers. That's just me guessing. I don't really know. But those are obviously the two best teams in the Western Conference, in my opinion, and I would have loved to see that showdown because some of those games early on in the season between those two teams, the Lakers and Clippers, was pretty good.
I think that's what started the season, right? The Lakers and Clippers tipped off the season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe so. I think you're right about that. They did, and it was a great game. I mean, all their games were great. The few games that they played, they were really good. And just imagine if you got a playoff series with those two teams in. I mean, that would have been pretty brilliant to me.
And the thing about it would have been, too, defensively. Like, that's something you see in the postseason that you just don't see in the NBA regular season is how much adjustments are made game to game throughout a series. And, the cliche is defense wins championships, but it's really true. If Frank Vogel was doing something that wasn't being as effective as stopping Kawhi Leonard or Paul George as he wanted to, in game one of that series, he would probably try something different in game two. And honestly, we're just deprived of one of the first seasons in a long time where it wasn't automatically going to be Cleveland against the Warriors. Obviously, last year Toronto got in, so that was a little bit different. But this year more than any such year in recent history has just been one where I think it was still very wide open. We went from the era of big threes with Bosh, LeBron, and Wade to the era of big twos with LeBron and Anthony Davis and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. You have McCollum and Lillard in Portland. I guess you could say you have Jokic and Murray. The list goes on. I know I'm missing another big duo in there. So, but my point is,
absolutely, yeah.
I was just going to say, my point is that we're not only deprived of the NBA, my favorite sport, which is unfortunate. We're not only deprived of sports in general stopping, but I think we were deprived of what would have been one of the best NBA playoffs in recent memory. And that's really, for me, what stings.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, I couldn't agree even more on that. I think for the first time in a long time, just to come up with what you were saying, Jason, is that there was a little bit more parity this season in the NBA than we've seen in a long time. Obviously, the last few years we're thinking, okay, Cleveland Warriors, the Warriors going to represent the Western Conference. Last year, we thought we were going to see the Warriors and Bucks, so we ended up seeing the Warriors and the Raptors, right? So I think this year was more of a year where we were going to see a great playoff run by a lot of teams and some good playoff matchups. And it's unfortunate that we're going to get deprived of it, just like we did March Madness and everything else, because this year, in a long time, there was more parity in the NBA than I can remember.
And like I said, I know
a long time.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And like I said, I know I'm missing a big duo there. When eventually I remember who else I should talk about in that big duo, I'll feel like an idiot. But I'm not going to remember for the time being. So it's just such a shame. The only saving grace for me is as an upset Brooklyn Nets fan who really felt some type of way when Kyrie Irving is coming out criticizing his teammates and only ends up playing 20 games and goes literally from one day practicing he's going to be out the rest of the season. He needed surgery. Then all of a sudden he's back. He's calling out his teammates. He's saying, we have this guy, this guy, this guy, and not this guy. You know, the Nets had been a disappointment up until, the season stopped. I don't really think they were going anywhere. So that saves me a little bit of grief, not having to watch that play out in real time. But like I said, the other basketball fan in me, wanted to watch March Madness, not because I'm specifically a fan of any one team, but I love the concept of, that 4 or 6 days a year where, there's games from noon to midnight. And then also selfishly how I wanted to see it affect LeBron's legacy. But let me ask you this, TC. How have you been spending your time with no sports games? Have you been watching old games? Have you been watching 30 for 30s? Are you a big Netflix guy? How you been spending your time?
Oh man, it's other than not working from home, what I've been doing is just trying to keep sane, man. Honestly, even without sports, been watching a lot of Netflix than I'm used to doing, and you could even catch me watching some reruns of some old, baseball games, basketball games that they had on, like CBS Sports and SNY. Like the other day, I was watching a Mets classic from last year. When they versed the Nationals and they came back. I think it was an August game or something like that. So yeah, I've just been watching some reruns. I've been watching, there's a lot of reruns of old games and a lot of Netflix, and also playing a lot of Madden and MLB The Show.
Well, I was going to ask. I know you were an avid Madden player, so I assumed that obviously was going up. And were you playing our good buddy Greg Woods and Ryan Gall?
No, I wasn't. I was actually just playing guys in this Madden league that I'm in. Just that league. I haven't played them in quite some time.
So let me ask.
I was playing Goal and MLB The Show yesterday, last night actually.
You were playing what in MLB The Show?
I was playing Ryan Gall in MLB The Show last night.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So yeah. I like MLB The Show. I really was a big fan, and I haven't played it in a while. I started playing half a game of 2K the other day, and honestly, I got bored. I'm not a big video game person. I think part of it's me, being a twin, or was used to playing with my brother, not playing against the computer. So I really just don't enjoy it. I'm not a huge video game person at this point in my life. So I played about a half a game of 2K and I was over it. But what I will say about MLB The Show, what I really like, if I was to go play it now, which again, I'm not going to, but if I was, I'd be a big Road to the Show guy, because my Road to the Show guy got like 3 years in with that guy. He could throw 99 miles an hour and he could throw a knuckleball. He was sick, man.
Yeah, I play a lot of that too. Road to the Show, that's a great feature. MLB The Show is just a great game. It's hard not to like it, especially if you like baseball, you like sports. It's a really good game to play, and that feature, Road to the Show, is one of the best features in that franchise.
Yeah, I go back and forth. Like I'll play Madden five days in a row, and then I'll play 2K, 5 days in a row. Whatever. I've experimented a little bit with the UFC, with Fight Night. I've played FIFA from time, probably like 4 career goals in FIFA, which is on par, TC, with the ability which I have to play soccer, because I played soccer from the time I was like 5 years old to 13. One day I got an assist. I was so close, but man, I didn't want to miss. I passed it off left and I got the assist, and nobody's talking about it because it's not a big deal, but it was a big deal to me. And isn't that really, the goal of youth sports, is to have fun? That day I had fun, but otherwise not a big soccer guy. My big claim to fame in rec basketball, scored 5 points one time, and it was in the same game.
Oh, yeah. There you go. That's not bad. But yeah, I agree. But, the main thing is, well, you want to win. Let's just put that out there. You want to win, but the concept is just having fun, Win, lose, or draw, I think. But you definitely do want to win, because there's nothing like winning, but, sometimes, you can't win them all, but as long as you had fun, that's the main thing there.
What about those smart people, TC, that say you learn more in defeat than in victory? There's something to that.
Yeah, I guess so.
You're not a big participation trophy guy?
I'll be honest with you, not really. I'm competitive. But like, let's just say, like, there's been times where I've lost, and I'm just like, I enjoyed the game. I enjoyed playing. You know what I mean? But yeah, you definitely want to win. Like, I'm very competitive. I'm sure you know that. I want to win, but even if you're good or not good, you can't win them all.
One time I beat you and our other buddy Keith 2-on-1 in basketball, but you probably don't want to talk about that.
That's right. Well, I mean, look, I still had fun that day. It was still a fun time, but I'm not that good at basketball, so I mean, I'm terrible at it. Actually,
you are. You didn't really get that. To take a layup, you need to get to the right angle and knock it off the box. We worked on that for quite some time, but you just didn't get it.
That's true. That's true. You're right.
All right. So something else we want to get to here on Wex On, Wex Off. Talked already about the NBA situation. We'll downshift a little bit to the NCAA's most recent decision in that they decided to grant an extra season of eligibility for the spring athletes that lost out on, if not all, 99% of their spring sports season, and decided to not grant an extra year of eligibility for these winter sports. And on the head, TC, I think that's the right decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is too, honestly. I mean, it sucks. It does suck. That for the winter athletes, at least, for, I mean, all of them in general, but at least for, the team, men and women basketball teams that were supposed to go into the tournament and have a little run. It sucks to see that, but I think it's a good move by the NCAA to do what they did, because, at least for the spring sports season, they're not going to be able to play, right? They're not going to play at all. So, at least the winter sports athletes, they got at least a full season minus the playoffs,
Right, like they got the majority of their season, and also
right.
I don't think the NCAA sustainability is such that you could have granted essentially 2/3 of these athletes a second year, an extra year. Excuse me. I don't think it would have made sense. They didn't get to a lot of these teams play in their postseason tournaments, finish their postseason tournaments. Obviously, there was no March Madness, no NIT, none of that. But they got to play the majority of their season. For people saying that they deserved a whole new season because they didn't get to play the postseason, to me is just off base. That's trying to make a perfect situation out of an imperfect situation. And I think the NCAA got it right with these spring athletes, giving them that year back. I have no problem with that. But if they had given an extra year to winter athletes who, again, played the majority of their season sans postseason, it wouldn't have made sense. I think that's part of growing up. And we joked earlier about participation trophies, but there's an element of that too, right? Like you can't always have everything the way you want it. Life doesn't always work out the way you want it. The NCAA had a decision to make, and I have to say, I think they made the right one in this case.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they made the right choice. I mean, look, people and organizations are going to have to make decisions through this tough time, and it's going to be tough decisions to make. And you know what? Whatever the decision is, most people are not going to like it, right? That's just how life is, and that's how it is right now, too. But I think it just didn't make sense timeline-wise either to grant any of the winter athletes, sports athletes, another year. It kind of doesn't make sense, right? Because most of these men and women are going to be, they're going to go to graduation. They got to have that, even though most of those are canceled, right?
Most of everything's canceled, man. That's the thing, Everything you could have possibly thought of is just not going on right now, and it's surreal for a lot of people, myself included.
Right, exactly. And another thing too is that most of these winter athletes are going to be, preparing for maybe the NBA draft, the MLB draft, and so on and so forth. So I think, or the NHL draft too. So I mean, that would kind of prolong them to go pro. And I mean, do you think that they're really going to not want to go pro? Right?
I didn't even think about it from the stance of that, because that athlete to me doesn't need the extra year of college eligibility.
Right.
If you at least are a draft prospect, you could probably at least play at the next level, whether it's in the United States in the D League, or whether, you're playing overseas, or you're playing in the AHL, you're playing in the ECHL. I was thinking more of how it affects those athletes that either they're mid-major D1, they're a player on the end of the bench at a big D1 program. They're the ones that were more affected to me. It didn't really come into my mind how these big Division I athletes, at least on the men's side, would be affected, because they lose out on some experience, but if they were going to go pro after this year, it probably doesn't affect that. It's looked at differently, and it should be because you have less of a sample size. But look, the major NCAA sports are basketball and football. That's just a fact, and those were played.
Right, it is, yeah.
Basketball didn't finish, but it certainly was played.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I just think it sucks for those student athletes that aren't like draft prospects or number one picks or first round picks, so on and so forth. It does suck for them, but you can't make the exceptions for them, and you can't just say it for everybody. Look, they got most of their season in compared to the spring athletes. The spring athletes are not going to have a season, so they're not getting any reps in. They're not getting anything. At least these athletes got most of the season in. They just didn't get the playoffs, and it sucks. Don't get me wrong, but to grant another year of eligibility to those players, I think it would just be the wrong call for the NCAA. I mean, they had most of their season. They just didn't have the playoffs or their conference tournament. I think at least having most of the regular season is enough to not give them their eligibility for another year.
And there are critics on the other side, though. Obviously, we're both in agreement that not an extra year of eligibility for winter sports was a good thing, and an extra year of eligibility for spring sports was the right move by the NC2A. But there are people that say, well, how does it affect, those now juniors that we're expecting to start, whether it's D3 or D1, their senior season? How does it affect their playing time?
Right.
And in the mid-major Division I and major Division I as well, how does it affect those baseball players, those lacrosse players who were finally waiting for a senior year to maybe get more playing time, maybe be promoted to team captain? All of a sudden, they're I guess they'll be super seniors are back on the team. How does it affect funding? How does it affect, team dynamics? And there are those that, I think were willing to take a more harsh stance on it than us, where, like we said already, life's not perfect. Things happen. Sometimes you don't get to do what you planned. But I think it'll affect, obviously, different schools in different ways, depending. But I think ultimately, it's the right decision. And obviously, I think that a lot of people, especially the Division III level, Division II level as well, will just will graduate and will not ever play sports competitively again. Will just have played 3 years for the NCAA because they want to move on with their lives. They want to go on to law school. They want to, start just working. I guess if they were gonna start law school or go to grad school, they could play an extra year. But for those people that they don't want to put another year of their life on hold because they've dedicated enough time to college sports, I got no problem with that either.
And, right. I agree. I do. I mean, you just think about most of those athletes that are probably at Division II, Division III. What's the likelihood they're going to actually go pro, right? So they probably already have them coming back for another year. It's probably not going to happen. They probably already have that backup plan to pursue whatever they got a degree in and so on and so forth. But I mean, it does suck for them. But in this case, I just couldn't see them doing, kind of reversing that, and giving the winter athletes that ability. I mean, it does suck. Don't get me wrong, in a way, because they don't have their playoffs. But I just think enough of the season that they played is just enough for them to. I mean, this whole thing. Don't get me wrong. This whole thing complicates everything.
Right, but it complicates every facet of life, right? It complicates it for the senior that's going to be graduating that maybe now decides to rethink his plan because he really loves baseball that much. He wants to play an extra year. He loves lacrosse that much, or she loves lacrosse or softball that much that they want to play an extra year. And that might affect incoming high school seniors. Maybe they don't get scholarships anymore. And I understand that that's going to happen, but like you said earlier, everybody has an opinion on everything that's done in life, and you can't please everybody.
No, you can't. That's just the unfortunate part of life, You can't, and in this case, that's clearly shown,
And I think, I don't know if we have enough time to get into it on this podcast. We'll probably get into it on our next one as we're winding down here on Wex on, Wex Off. We talked about that was one of the things that the NCAA did correctly. There's plenty of things that I think that they don't do correctly. Obviously, if you don't want to pay athletes for playing, I understand that. I really do understand that. But to not allow these big Division I athletes like Tua Tagovailoa, like Tim Tebow, like Vince Young,
Right.
Tyler Hansborough, to not having been able to profit off their name and their likeness in college is wrong. I'd love to let you respond, TC, but I'd love to talk about this on our next podcast. So that'll do it for this episode.
I agree.
That'll do it for this episode of Wex On, Wex Off. Big thanks to TC for being with me, and we'll try to do this as much as we have time. We appreciate you listening. And this has been Wex On, Wex Off.